When you think of dangerous sports, you probably think of things like football or wrestling, but baseball, most people think of it as safe. But here's the reality: arm injuries in baseball are climbing and they're happening younger than ever. From 13 years old, getting MRI confirmed labrum tears, or 8-year olds getting little leaguer shoulder, to high school seniors getting Tommy John before they're even committed to a college, this is not normal, but it is preventable. Today, we're unpacking what's really behind this trend and what it means for your athlete. Welcome back to the Mound Ready podcast, the show where baseball players, parents, and coaches learn how to protect their arms, build real strength, and get back to dominating on the field. I'm your host, Dr. Dominic Rangel. Let's jump into today's episode and get you one step closer to being Mound Ready. What's up, everybody, and welcome back. So glad you're here. Make sure, if you like what you hear, to hit the subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. And if you're listening on our podcast, then make sure that you hit the follow button. Today, we're talking about a huge, hot topic in baseball right now. And I have big opinions on this because I see this so much in the clinic. These kids are literally being pushed to the limit, and we have ways of protecting them, but nobody's really utilizing them. This is going to be a 2-part series, so watch for the next episode later this week. The first thing that I want to talk about today is what are the big picture injury trends when we talk about baseball? So yeah, baseball has fewer collisions, but that doesn't mean that it's safer. When we look at the MLB, the injury rate is 3.6 to every 1,000 players, which is far lower than the NBA, which is 21.4 injuries for every 1,000 players. But baseball injuries are just different. Like, they're chronic, debilitating, and long lasting. And most are really like non-contact, meaning that they build up over time from overuse, poor mechanics, and improper training, but not necessarily from running into another player. Although that does happen sometimes, that's not what we're seeing the most of. We're really seeing a huge shift in the type of injuries that most of the players are coming to the clinic for. When we look back at the injury trends 10 years ago, was more like wear and tear injuries, like degenerative issues. So things like rotator cuff tears, chronic tendinopathy, where the tendon was fraying because of just playing baseball for a longer period of time. Now the injury trends are more like traumatic injuries at younger ages, things like lat tears, rib stress fractures, UCL ruptures, little league shoulder and elbow. And this is happening in young kids, like 8 years old, and all the way through like high school and into even like college and minor league. But the recovery for these types of injuries is long. The surgery recovery rate, like despite the fact that people think these are quick returns, UCL surgery, that's like 12 to 16 months at best, right? It's not a 100% return rate. A lot of people think you're just going to have the surgery and come back. Well, at 1 year after the surgery, there's a 1.6% return rate. There's a 71.9% at 2 years and 82% at 3 years. And that's not at the same level of ability as before, right? That's return to performance. This that I just told you, that's just return to play. Return to performance is actually 11.8% at 2 years and 28.1% at 3 years. So don't think that if your kid just gets the surgery, they're going to bounce back. Like, most of the time I hear they're going to need it anyways. So let's go ahead and just get it done. Like, there's a chance that the surgery itself could be career ending. So you don't want that for your child. Even labral surgeries, like 50 to 70% of the time, they only 50%, 50 or 70% of the time they return to actual play. And at the same level is even less than that. Honestly, when we talk about this, I mean, the numbers don't lie. More players are getting hurt, and they're getting hurt earlier in their career. The ones that should be just growing and playing the game are getting shut down. And as we start talking about what's really happening in youth and amateur sports, I want you to keep in mind that the push for velo and performance, it's not going anywhere. So it's not that we're trying to get rid of it. We just need to learn how to modify around it and how to get the players ready for these things, because there are ways for us to get them ready. The next thing that I want to talk about is what's really happening in youth and amateur baseball. So let's just zoom in on youth and high school athletes right now. So what does the research show? And the research is showing that 25% of college baseball injuries are severe. That means that they're missing more than 10 days. So, shoulder and elbow injuries are the most common in pitchers, which of course isn't surprising. But what about this? Specializing before the age of 13 in baseball increases your risk of shoulder injuries 5 times and elbow injuries 3 times. Not 5% and 3%, but 5 times and 3 times more likely to get injured. But why? These kids don't just play one sport, they play it year round, over and over, same movements. They play for multiple teams, they hit every weekend, they throw bullpens year round, and never truly rest. These kids are specializing early and it's affecting the draft findings too. So there was a study of 845 MLB draft picks, and they only took the first 5 rounds of athletes. 27% of those people had already had a UCL surgery. So, what is making it worse or more common? Well, there's a faster pitch velo or velocity. There's a younger age whenever they're participating in their first showcase. There's a higher number of showcases per year, right? It's exploded over the last decade where there used to be 2 to 3 showcases per year, and now there's 6 or more. And because there's more, they're having a harder time ramping down or deloading and ramping back up for these showcases and then like getting ready for the next tournament or the next season, whether they're playing summer ball or fall ball, or I mean, everybody plays in the spring, right? And so if we're not able to gauge when they're supposed to ramp up or ramp down based on how much time they have to the next thing, it becomes a lot more difficult to make sure that they're safe. So we need a way to track them using the data that we currently have. Otherwise, they're just kind of going for it and hoping for the best. And more exposure equals more pressure. The pressure on these kids to perform at a high level or throw harder to match the mean pitching velo in the MLB is extremely outrageous. I mean, early on, athletes and parents are chasing numbers, they're chasing scholarships, they're chasing visibility. But at what cost? The cost of health. Players who make it in the long run aren't really the ones who go viral at 14. They're the ones who stay healthy long enough to compete at 18 years old, 20 years old, and 24 years old. They got to maintain their health and not have surgery. That's really the true flex these days. But why are the injuries getting worse and more severe? Well, it used to be that baseball injuries happen because you're older, but that's really changed. Like I said earlier, UCL tears were only seen in pitchers who had been pitching for a while, and it was a chronic degenerative thing. Versus now, it's the most common in high school athletes. Like even middle school, the highest age risk for UCL tears is 15 to 19 years old. That's based on research. And we're seeing newer injuries, things that we didn't see a whole lot before, like thoracic outlet syndrome, which is compression of the nerves and the vessels in your shoulder, and lat, teres major tears, rib stress fractures from high rotational torque. They're not normal injuries for 14 to 17-year-olds. This is crazy. The human body, especially the adolescent body, was not built to handle year round explosive movements like we're having them do right now. Bones are growing faster than the tendons and the muscle, and they're not able to adapt and keep up. It's going to create these imbalances, which is like if you don't address them, it's going to lead to some type of breakdown because more is not always necessarily better. More innings, more teams, more tournaments, more showcases, that leads to more injuries. Yes, you're getting more exposure, but you're also fatiguing your body a lot. But the big thing is, this is what people are seeing as normal and needed to enhance performance. And now we're seeing more surgeries before college than we ever have before. Just because your child had an injury that happens to professional athletes whenever they're 15 doesn't mean that your 15-year-old is more advanced. It means you're pushing them way too far and way too fast. These things shouldn't be happening to them unless we're pushing them to that limit. What does this mean for you, the parent who's trying to do the right thing? Here are some red flags and key things to monitor while you're with your child. You got to monitor their playing time. You got to know what your kid is doing across all the teams. Are they pitching for school, for club, a showcase team, all in 1 month? That's 3 times the workload. You can't just count pitches. But yeah, we do have new pitch count guidelines, and we can use benchmarks to determine readiness to throw. Is their arm sore, or how are they feeling? And sometimes the soreness and feeling, maybe they feel fine. Well, there's something called neurological fatigue where the nerves actually are fatigued, but they feel fine physically. That is how the way that we track that is we start to use strength metrics. And we're going to talk about that here in just a minute. Now, what are the fatigue signals that they might be showing you? Is their velocity dropping during the games? Are they wincing or rubbing their shoulder or changing their mechanics? Things that you don't normally see them doing. Do they really need painkillers just to compete? I hear kids saying, ibuprofen, I be playing, or ibuprofen, I be pitching. And honestly, that is just absolutely terrible. Terrifies me every time whenever I hear somebody saying that. Now let's talk about those strength benchmarks. Has anyone tested their grip strength or rotator cuff strength after you get them? Do you know if that amount of strength that they're giving you, does that mean that they're able to handle the amount of velocity that they use over the certain period of time that they're going to be pitching? Well, we do that. We take those numbers and we utilize them and we put them into a machine and it converts it. And after it's converted, what we do is we can also put them on a biodex machine, which is the gold standard for strength testing. And not all places have access to this. And we convert those numbers to torque to body weight measurements, which give us an exact measurement for their body weight, their length of their arm, their velocity. And it tells us when and if they're absolutely ready to start throwing, and are they fully recovered and ready to throw again for the next outing. The next thing that you got to pay attention to is the mechanics. Do they move efficiently, or are they just trying to throw hard? Are they using their arm? Are they blocking well with the lead leg? Is the trunk sequence good, where they have good hip trunk separation? Are they decelerating cleanly? Is the belt buckle staying towards home plate, or are they rotating and falling off to first base? These are all the things that we need to be tracking and watching to make sure that nothing's going haywire. And the last thing is, are they playing year round? Are they throwing more than 8 months out of the year? Do they have a real off season? You have to remember that even professional players have 2 to 4 months of a downtime. You don't need to overcomplicate it. You just need to ask better questions, and you need to make sure that your athlete is being coached with their health in mind. This rise that we're seeing in baseball injuries isn't just a freak trend, it's a reflection of how the game is changing and how it has changed over the last few years. And unless we change how we prepare the athletes, we're going to keep seeing more careers cut short before they even get to begin. Now, if you're a parent and you want to make sure your athlete is on the right path, not just play well now, but to play long term and eventually make it to the next level, college, minor leagues, major leagues, you can text me 0390 6577 or drop a comment on this episode, and let's talk about what you need to do to build something for your athlete that's going to last and get them mound ready.